Hey, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining me again, like always. I appreciate always having an audience of people that are listening to me and listening to my perspectives on things. So if you could kindly press subscribe, like, or the notification button if you're already a subscriber, I greatly appreciate it. Today, I want to ask you a question. Are you ego tripping? Is ego tripping keeping you broke? Is the right way to say it. I've discovered in life that there's a lot of egotistical situations going on in the world where people are combining their self-value, their self-esteem with ego tripping. Self-esteem is a value and what you think about yourself. You strip away all the materialistic items that you may have or what you think other people may think of you, and you have your esteem, how you actually feel about yourself. Whereas ego tripping is something you do, it's something that you go out to acquire, something like that, to signify a sense of self-worth. It doesn't have anything to do with actually your actual self-esteem. It's decisions that you're making to create this egotistical spectrum or lifestyle that you may be living in. And I'll be the first to raise my hand and say guilty. I've done that in the past. And I always want to be extra clear and careful about accusing other people of doing it. That's not the intent or the goal of my actual videos. It's just to give perspectives and insights on things that I've noticed so that people can question themselves on their own and come to their own conclusions of where they're at. What is something that someone would do to ego trip? An ego trip would be someone that in order to feel better about themselves, they go out and buy a brand new car, create a 5 or 6 year note on that car. By the way, if you buy a car and it takes you 5 to 6 years to pay for it, you can't afford it. There are those rare occasions where somebody's going to say, what do you mean I can't afford it? You know, where you've created residual income, and that income off of that property that you bought is paying for your car note, and that's the way you calculate it out. I get all that. But when you're working a 9 to 5 and you're bringing in X amount of money, and this is taken directly away from your sense or your way of living and your comfortability of living because of this car note, you probably can't afford it. That's ego tripping. That's what that is that's ego tripping. Going out to do something like that to make yourself feel better about your situation based on something that can be taken away from you at any given time. That house you live in that you know you need to downsize because that monthly note is killing you every time it hits, but you don't want to downsize because you'll be in a situation where you don't have that same sense of self-worth because of where you're at in life. That's the ego speaking. You're not doing the things that you need to do to put yourself in position to build a strong foundation and build yourself up with a solid foundation. When you're doing things to continue to keep a facade up, things like that vacation you might have went on 6 months or a year ago, but when the credit card bill comes, you're still paying on it. You couldn't afford it. You're ego tripping. So I'm guilty of it. I grew up in LA. LA is a real fast-paced city where people are doing their things and getting ahead, and in order to have that aura about yourself where you want people to take you seriously and you want people to understand that you have your own things going on, people get caught up in trying to impress others and having situations where they've extended themselves, they've ego tripped to allow a perspective of themselves that's not actually true, which actually can lower your self-esteem if it all boils down to it. But I mentioned me growing up in LA because what I decided I needed to do to get out of an egotistical ego trip of my own is I knew I always wanted to get into real estate, and at property averaging about $1 million for one property in LA and the amount of money I was making at the time, it was never going to be feasible for me to make that work for me. So I had to humble myself, strip down all the layers of ego, and moved to a smaller town in Central California to start my real estate portfolio, where things were a lot cheaper, things were a lot easier to do, a place where people didn't know me and I didn't care what they thought of me, so that I was able to build that foundation that I wanted to build and build it up so that when I get the things that are perceived as ego, they're no longer ego, because you can take them away from me and I no longer care, because I have a foundation that I built up from that allows me the security to know who I am. And so I want to ask you, if you're still listening, there may be something, and I don't want to accuse you of ego tripping, but let's say there may be something that's borderline, something that somebody else could construe as you ego tripping, and you want to get rid of those barriers that you have for yourself. What do? Well, you first start with being honest with yourself and give a true assessment of what your self-worth is without any of the items or assets that you might acquire in order to make yourself feel better. And start stripping those things away and start developing yourself from the ground up, a foundation. You might have to do something very drastic in order to put yourself in that situation, like I did. I moved away from friends, family, my home life, what I was accustomed to actually put myself in a position where I can humble myself, strip away the ego, and actually establish the life that I wanted to look for. Because there's always a fork in the road. Which way are you going to go? You're going to go down that same path that you know is going to take you to the same place? Or are you going to go down that unknown path that probably holds the treasures to the goals that you want to achieve? I recommend the road less traveled always. You'll actually even hear it in several of my videos about the road less traveled, the path, the journey, whatever it is. It's there for you to understand that your path is not going to be like anyone else's. And when you're ego tripping, you're trying to fit into a mold or a cultural dynamic that is not necessarily you. I want you to be that cultural enigma. Put you in that place that you need to be for your life. Hopefully you'll start to avoid some of the struggles and strifes that you may be accustomed to right now. It's all about lifestyle change. I appreciate you listening. Till next time, I'm out.